Okay, here we go. This is a new system I've been working on. This is stochastic. This is this blue line and the red line. This is my stochastic that I had on my computer on my MT4. This is the one that's native to MT4. And these are going to be the settings, 55, 55, and a smoothing of 2, set to low and high, and simple. And then all I've done up here, this is the same settings, is then I go down here and I pull up a moving average, drag it over to the window that I want it on, the indicator I want it on. And then this is a 21 exponential, set to close. You don't want it set to close. You want it first indicators window, and you want it on the simple. And then we're going to go over here and get another moving average. We're going to change it to the dots. And this will be 9, simple, and first indicators window. Now I've got them reversed here. On this one I've got the 9 as a solid, 21 as a dotted, and down here I had the 9 as a dotted and the 21 as a solid. You can do it either way, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to delete this indicator now. Just wanted to show how you set that up. And we're set with this one. So what we're doing is if you go to the data window, when the stochastic line crosses the signal line, so when the blue line crosses over the red, we open a trade. If it goes from the bottom up, we're buying. And in order to have a buy, we have to have the 9 and the 21 below the red line. So if this blue line had crossed here, say, the 9's already above the red line, so there wouldn't have been a trade. And for the cells, see right here, where this crossed over, that wasn't a cell. I'll go over these in a second. Let's find one here. So here's a buy, here's a sell. So price came down, and the 21 and the 9 were still above the red. So that's a valid sell. So if we go back to the start here, so the blue line has crossed over the red. The 9 and the 21 are still below the red. So we open a trade on this candle. And then when the 9 crosses over the red line, we could open another trade and close this trade. And then when the 21 crosses the red line, we close the last trade. So what I've done here is this 388 pips, which is 38 pips, is I've taken it as a single trade. So when the blue line crossed the red, I opened a trade, and when the 9 crossed, I closed it, and that gave me 38 pips. So this 850 is when the blue line crossed the red, I opened this trade. When the 9 crossed the red, I opened this trade, and when the 21 crossed the red, I closed both trades. So I got a plus 850. Now, I prefer to do it with just one trade. You've got less exposure. If you're doing multiple pairs, you've got less exposure by doing the one trade. You don't necessarily make as much profit in pips as the 2 trades, but as we'll see as we go along, this can be a good thing or a bad thing. So the ones with the plus are the both trades included, and the ones that are just numbers by themselves, no plus, is a single trade. So this one worked out very well. If we go to the next one, so here we get the lines above the red, the blue comes down below the red, so we open this first trade here. And then when the 9 crosses, we open another trade, but what I would do is close this trade and I'd be done. And then when the 21 crossed, we close both these trades. But if you just close the first trade, you get 10 pips. If you close both at this point, we get 84 pips. So we're still doing very well either way. Now here is one that didn't work out. The blue crossed. The MAs are still below the red, so that's a valid entry. And then when the 9 crossed on this candle, I would have closed this trade for a negative 5.2 pips. And because the blue line crossed back over the red before the 21 crossed the red, we close all it. That's a trade. That's a closed trade. Consequently, if this blue line had gone up and come right back out, it would have been a buy. It would have been a buy and then a close. This is not a sell now because one of the MAs is above and one of the MAs is below the red line. So this is just a close of all trades. This one's a simple, if you look at the data folder, this blue line, the 21, sorry, is still below the red line at this point. If you look at the data page. So this is a valid entry, and then I would have closed that trade there for 252 pips when the 9 crossed. And then when the 21 crossed, we got this closed both trades for 330.7 pips. So even though that's just one trade, and this is both trades, it's still a pretty close number. There's only 5 pips in it on that one. So what we have here is a loss. On this candle, we had a dip. If you look at the data sheet, this blue line is on this candle below the red. Both MAs are above, so that's a valid sell. And it came right back up on this candle, so we close this trade in a loss. And then immediately we get another sell signal here as the blue line crosses the red down with both MAs above the red on this candle. And then when the 9 crosses on this candle, I would have closed this trade for 52 pips. And if we waited for the 21, we would have closed on both trades on this candle, and we would have gotten 50 pips. So actually gained 2 pips on that one. Here's a straightforward buy, single trade, both trades. And here's a sell, which is pretty straightforward, single trade, both trades. Same again, a nice buy and a nice sell. Now here, when this blue line crossed up after this trade had finished, sorry, what was going on here? So the blue line crossed down, we opened to sell. When the 9 crossed down here, I would have closed that trade for 225 pips, 22.5 pips. And then before the 21 crossed, we had the blue line cross back above on this candle. So if you're doing both trades, both these trades would have closed out on that candle for a loss of 32.8 pips. There's no buy on this because one MA is above and one MA is below when the blue line crossed the red line. is a straightforward buy. Big discrepancy here. 100 pips difference. Now here it worked in our favor here, but we got a sell here. The blue line crossed the red below, and both MAs are above the red line, so that's a valid sell. Then we get the 9 crossing here. I think this should have been a -6 up here. And then when this 21 crosses, price is actually higher than the start. So if both trades close there, we end up with 74 pips of loss. I think that was supposed to be -6. And then here we have a loss. It came up above the red and came right back down, and then went back up again. So that's a valid buy because the MA is still below. And then the 9 ended up on this candle crossing, so I would have closed that first trade for 791. And then if we'd waited for the 21, we would have got that many pips there. Here's a loss. It came up, valid buy, and I think the 9 and crossed, and then the blue crossed at the same time. So that's a loss of 8.4. Now here again, it worked in our favor. We had a buy opportunity on this candle, and the 9 crossed on this candle. So if you closed that trade on this candle, you would have gained 54 pips. And if you'd waited for the 21, or in this case the blue line crossing back over on this candle, then both trades would have closed for a loss of 93 pips. Here's another real quick in and out loss, expensive. And another one here. Now, we didn't get, on the data window, when this blue line crossed, the 9 was already lower than the red, so there's no trade here. It looked like it might have been a good trade. And then if I jump to the end, this is 3 years or 2 years. Just bring this down. So if we took all these trades as a one trade, just the blue line and then the 9, we'd have gained 314 pips. If we'd done 2 trades, we would have gained 454 pips. I still prefer the one trade, just because if you're doing multiple pairs, you could have a lot of trades open at once, and I would think that having less risk is better than a few more pips. Okay, I'll end it there.